Hi, this is Tom Jones. I'll be doing an introduction in about 1 minute. I'm just watching the participant count click up there. For all you people who jumped in on time, thank you. Getting started here in less than a minute. This committee is comprised of 15 individuals who've been working for months to develop a full slate of 2021 educational offerings for LVN members. Janet knows I'm someone who doesn't mind going off script. I'll say that the amount of passion and planning that is going into these to just make sure that every single one has excellent content is it's impressive. There's 3 educational tracks: innovation, pricing and LPM, and beyond the technical, which is the committee that I'm a part of. I'm excited to introduce our first Beyond the Technical program today. But first, let me say a few words about the community. LVN is a growing community of more than 650 business of law professionals. It's very impressive since they just kicked it off mid-year last year. LVN is working hard to bring its members curated content like today's webinar, the Council of Luminaries series, a monthly newsletter, an annual conference set for October 6th to 8th, 2021, and new this year, a podcast series that will launch soon and roundtable discussions with the first one slated for February 17th. If you're not an LVN member yet, I have one idea for you at the end of this webinar. Go to legalvaluenetwork.com and look in the Become a Member tab and sign up today to ensure that you continue to enjoy all the offerings. Be sure to follow LVN on LinkedIn and Twitter. Couple housekeeping items. The only video feed you're going to see is that of the record the session, and it will be available at the legalvaluenetwork.com website. And finally, questions are encouraged and chat is encouraged. So we want you to chat your comments and answer questions that the presenter is putting forward. But if you have a Q&A question, type it into that Q&A window. If it's appropriate and I can ease it in with Rich, I'll interrupt him to ask you a question. Otherwise, we'll save them to the back. So with that, let's get to the program titled Leveraging Emotional Success for Daily Success. As we welcome the new year, you may be in the process of establishing professional goals. LVN will help you kick off your efforts by fine-tuning the foundation skills necessary to help you achieve these goals by the information that you'll learn today in this first Beyond the Technical webinar. Whether you realize it or not, your emotional intelligence plays a critical role in your everyday life. Your emotional intelligence helps you to make decisions that can make or break your day. In this webinar, Rich Bracken will dive into the core elements of emotional intelligence and how you can leverage them for personal and professional happiness. He'll provide suggestions on how to use your EQ to help you succeed and grow every day, especially in the face of constant change. I'm pleased to introduce you to today's speaker, Richard Bracken, keynote speaker and author, and a self-proclaimed inspirator. You can find out more information on Rich at richbracken.com. Rich, I'm already inspired. Take it away, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Tom, and I appreciate the fact that my coat has probably inspired you to have more emotional intelligence. It's a bright one, but it's a very effective one. So thank you, everyone, for taking your time today to join us for this kickoff to 2021 and this necessary topic. This is often referred to as a soft skill. I refer to it as a necessary skill. And throughout the presentation today, I'm going to tell you why. Because emotional intelligence, I found several years ago, has become the most universally applicable topic and the most powerful topic to discuss and share with other people, because it is so important to who you are as a person and a professional. So today is all about you. It's all about how you can look beyond the technical, how you can look beyond the requirements of your day-to-day and become a better person and professional on a more balanced sense. So 2 things that I want to kick off with. Number one, if you have a cell phone handy, you're going to need it at the very end, but you're not going to need it until the end. So if you have it, turn it off, put it on mute, put the screen face down. This is your time for you. This is your time to take care of who you are as a person and invest this time into really focusing on how you can improve your life on a day-to-day basis. The second thing is I want you to be very participatory. So I'm going to ask you questions. I'm going to encourage you to get in the chat functionality as well as the Q&A if you have questions. So please do that. And I'm going to add a third thing. Before we get started, I want you to take a big deep breath and I want to let your shoulders drop because this is a time for you. This is your time to invest in yourself. This is your time to spend time on you. So without further ado, let's get into the topic. Now, if you follow me on social media or you've known me for more than 3 seconds, you understand that I am very big on quotes, motivation, and inspiration. So this quote to me was one that jumped out when I first started studying emotional intelligence, and it is such a powerful statement. I'm not somebody who reads direct quotes off of slides, so I'm going to let you ingest this for a minute, because truly emotional intelligence is understanding your emotions and then what you do with them on a day-to-day basis. So today is all about informing you on what to do with those emotions and how you can take power back in your day. Because as we've seen almost a year now that we've been in, pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, it's been detrimental to a lot of people's mental health. Their emotional intelligence has suffered. So today is the day that you take the power back. Today is the day that you become more invested in how you act on a day-to-day basis. And I'm going to give you those tips and tricks on how to do that throughout this presentation. Not only am I going to give you the knowledge, I'm going to give you some situational examples on how you can use your emotional intelligence throughout your day, both personally and professionally. And there are several things because we're in the legal industry, so we need proof points, we need facts, we need things that we're going to take away. So here are the 3 things you're going to do today that will improve you and how you will get better throughout the day. You're going to understand what emotional intelligence is, or understand it greater if you are already familiar with the term, and you're going to understand how it works in these different situations. The good thing about emotional intelligence, as opposed to your IQ, your EQ can actually be increased. So the studies show that your IQ peaks out around 15, which, for some people is good or bad, but your ability to learn more it peaks out after a certain amount of time. So your EQ is something that is very malleable and it's very elastic and you can grow and shrink it in certain situations. So we're going to talk about how you can grow your emotional intelligence to become a stronger person. And then finally, as I mentioned, I'm going to give you control back. I'm going to give you control back over your emotions. I'm going to give you control back over your work success. I'm going to give you control back on everything because emotional intelligence hits all aspects of our life. So I want to make sure that you understand everywhere that you can possibly use it. And then there will be some aha moments you'll have after the presentation that you'll think, oh, this applies to this situation, or this is how I should react in this different situation. So I'm going to give you things that are going to last you the rest of your life. Now, what is emotional intelligence? To me, I always explain it as it's a dance. It's a dance with yourself because our emotions shift throughout the day. They're constantly ebbing and flowing depending on what's going on. And so it's a dance with ourselves, but it's also a dance with other people. Even though we've been in a virtual environment for so long, we still have interactions. We still have communications with people, either it's emails or Zoom meetings or text messages or phone calls, or in the instance that we can be socially distant and safe, we still have those interpersonal communications. So it's really understanding your emotions and how your emotions are impacting you, but then also how you're dancing with other people emotionally and communication wise to make sure that that dance is in sync, that everybody understands what their role is and that it looks really good from a choreographical emotional standpoint. So it really is all about managing that ebb and flow throughout the day for you and for the people that you come in contact with. Now, there are 4 different core elements of EQ, and now there are several different schools of thought. The one that I subscribe to is Dr. Travis Bradberry's Emotional Intelligence 2.0. The core theories in that book are where I really started learning about emotional intelligence. Number 1, there's only 4 core elements to it, as opposed to others that there's like 13 or 14. So this becomes a little bit easier to navigate, and so it's more broadly applicable. But these 4 core elements are broken into 2 different sections. There are the sections that apply to you individually, and then there are the sections that apply to other people and how you interact socially. So the first one is self-awareness. Self-awareness, I could give you a long definition. I prefer short definitions because they're easier to remember. It's really, how am I feeling? What are my emotions? And the shocking statistic that I found when researching emotional intelligence is that 36% of people can truly identify their emotions when they happen. 36%. Now, that was pre-pandemic, so I'm sure with everything that's gone on, that number has dropped because we've struggled mightily with emotional intelligence, with self-care, and with mental health. So understanding what your emotions are the core foundation of what your self-awareness is. Now, what you feel and once you understand what your emotions are, then it's all about what are you doing with them? So we all know that individual, or we've had an individual in our life that is considered a hothead, somebody that has their emotions get the best of them. Now, that could also be on the positive side, somebody that just is overjoyed and comes off the rails every time something good happens. Emotional intelligence goes both ways here. So self-management is really what are you doing with those emotions once they come up, once they creep up, because we all have, again, your emotions shift on a second by second, minute by minute basis. So what are you doing with those emotions? That is the core of self-management. Understanding what you feel is self-awareness, and what you would do with it is self-management. That is the personal bucket of things. Now, unless we live in a cave and we get rid of all social media, which sounds really nice, but unless we are completely removing ourselves from society, we're going to have to interact with other people. So when we think about social awareness, that is, what are you feeling? What's going on with you? What is your body language telling me? What is your tone telling me? What am I gleaning off of a Zoom meeting when I'm looking around at the different squares? How can you be more aware of what's going on with the other individual? How are you reading tone into emails and text messages? And how are you communicating your misunderstandings and all of those things that come with a two-way communication? So again, your emotions are yours to identify and manage, but then you also have to be aware of what other people are thinking. They're those people that we would say, they are completely oblivious to what other people are feeling or sensing. They don't actively listen. They don't pay attention to body language, and they really are just oblivious to what's going on. Those people have a very low emotional intelligence when it comes to social awareness. And so it's impactful and critical that we understand that the emotions of others need to be paid attention to. Again, I go back to the example of it being a dance. It's really understanding what the other person is feeling and what's going on with them. And then all of these things wrapped into one is relationship management. And so if you think about the first 5 people that come to mind, whether it's personally or professionally, could you grade those relationships on a 1 to 10 or an A to F scale? What are those relationships? How do they stand? Where are they graded at right now? And if it's anything less than an A, or if it's anything less than a 9 or a 10, what could you do better? Maybe there are elements of your communication that you could be improving on. Maybe there are things that you can do to improve that relationship. Again, it comes back to emotional intelligence at some level. So no matter where your relationships are, no matter who you're interacting with, everything can be increased and enhanced through emotional intelligence. Now, why is this important in the legal industry? Because there are some shocking statistics that I'm going to share with you here in a little bit, but there are some fundamental elements of why this is important in the legal industry that some are going to be surprising and some are not. The legal industry is based around logic. It's a black and white environment, contracts and law and understanding what impacts a client's business or our business as a firm. Those things are very logically based, which is wonderful, which is what the industry is trained to be. When people come out of law school, they're more logical than they were when they went in. But where the problem comes in is that they forget about emotion. They forget about the emotional capabilities that they have that could impact a situation, whether it's a client interaction or a matter or how they're interacting with their colleagues. Emotion is really important to keep in the conversation. So it really is a balance of keeping logic front of mind, yes, because that's part of the industry. That's the core of the industry, and that's what's driving business and driving successful matters. But it's also the emotional factors that we need to consider when communicating with others. Creativity and strength. When we think about people with low emotional intelligence, they're not very creative because they can't see the forest for the trees, as they would say. When you have a higher level of emotional intelligence, you are more creative. You see other possibilities. You see angles outside of what's directly in front of you. So that logic gets challenged a little bit when you have more creativity. That's where more creative problem solving comes in. That's where different alternatives come in to finding just an A to Z answer. You could find other opportunities to serve your internal colleagues, your clients, or your family, your spouse. There are other ways that you can do this, but specifically within the legal industry, it provides more creativity and it provides more strength. I'm going to talk about the strength aspect here in just a minute. Legal interactions and anxiety. The comment that I heard once and that I completely buy into is that any legal conversation involves emotion, even if it's the most contractually logical question that comes in. There is some sort of anxiety that comes with that call, because when we think about our clients, when we think about the emotion that comes in, because our clients are attorneys too, and they don't like to not know something just as much as we don't like to know something. So when we think about how emotion plays in, when that client picks up the phone to call, or when somebody calls you with a question, there is an emotion tied to that. It's not just a black and white question. There is the vulnerability of understanding that I don't know the answer, so I need to go seek out something else. I need to go seek out a response. I need to go seek out some sort of a resolve to this. So that brings vulnerability. It also brings anxiety. So when you think about being anxious in that call or anxious in that communication, it's really imperative that we understand and go into it with empathy and have those conversations with higher levels of empathy to find solutions and to understand that the individual that's asking the question has that vulnerability to them. So that is really important to understand, that the higher your emotional intelligence, the more likely you are to lower that anxiety, both for you and the individual that you're communicating with. And finally, it's an emotional contagion, whether it's in a virtual environment or an in-person environment, whether it's how you're communicating via text message or email or through Zoom communications. Emotions are contagious. If you come into a meeting, if you think about that person that maybe you're in a group of 4 or 5 people and you're talking at a cocktail reception or you're having a lunch, and then that person walks up, and that person is always known as like the Debbie Downer or the Eeyore of the group, and they always bring a different negative emotion. That emotion is contagious. You could be having a great conversation and being very boisterous and joyful and happy, and then that one person walks up and the mood changes. It dampens a little bit, because emotions are contagious. So how you act has impact on others. How others impact may have an effect on you. So understanding that the higher our emotional intelligence, the higher that we are able to understand and manage our emotions, has a lot to do with how contagious those negative emotions or positive emotions could be. Now, there are 2 other statistics that I want to touch on when it comes to overall performance. 58%, that stands for the amount of responsibility that emotional intelligence has for your performance. So when you think about all the things that make you a successful individual professionally, even personally, there are groups of things. It's your skill set, it's your knowledge, it's your background, it's your experience. All of those things make up a bulk of who you are as a professional, as a successful professional. That's 42% of it. The other 58% has everything to do with your emotional intelligence. It's your communication style. It's your relationship management. It's how you're handling pressure, how you're handling quick turn assignments. And if you have ever dealt with a quick turn assignment and you've been stressed out, please drop a yes in the chat. I want everybody to feel connected and empowered in this, because we've all been there. We've all experienced that. We've all had that time where that email came through or that phone call came through and we had to act on a dime. And it seemed like an unrealistic expectation at the time, but that was because our emotions got the best of us. And emotional intelligence will allow you to pause, catch your breath, and say, there's a way to solve this. Let's figure this out. But again, your high level of performance will come through managing that emotional intelligence, and it'll allow you to pivot a lot more confidently and a lot easier, and try to keep, you're probably not going to be absolved of anxiety. That's not the point of this. It's understanding that your anxiety is short-lived and it's not as impactful as you think it is. So this is going to be the way that you understand those situations and how you manage those better. And 90% of top performers have a high emotional intelligence. Again, if we think about the strong leaders in our lives, the people that make a really good positive impact, whether it's somebody that you follow on LinkedIn or somebody that you admire at work or somebody that you just aspire to follow more because they just have a really good feel to them. They have really good insight. They understand problems. They know how to talk through those things. As Stuart Scott of ESPN used to say, they're cool as the other side of the pillow. Those people have a high emotional intelligence. That's why they're top performers, because you can be very intelligent You can be very knowledgeable about what you do, but if you can't communicate correctly, if you don't have good active listening capabilities, if you don't understand other people's body language or how your actions affect other people, that relationship management takes a big hit. You can't be an effective leader if you don't have a high emotional intelligence. So understand that all of these factors will play into how you perform as an individual. And the best news is that you control that. And we're going to talk through some of the different aspects of how you can do that on a day-to-day basis. Now, the puzzle of this all, and again, let me pause and say that I'm so grateful that you're all here, especially within the legal industry, because the legal industry has some problems that emotional intelligence specifically will help. Specifically helps attorneys, individuals in the legal industry, because we're all logical and we all think in a very logical sense at some level. So there are certain percentages and certain aspects and personality isms about those individuals in the legal network that we can work on. And the good thing is that these are all fixable. Now, so don't get all rocked when you see these numbers and hear me explain these. Again, it's the puzzle of how do we manage these things and how do we get things to align correctly. So when we think about personality status, the 50th percentile is what the average American will feel. 50th percentile, you're kind of at the middle of the road, right? So any of these credentials or any of these criteria have to do with the ebb up and down of how the legal network acts. So people in the legal profession are in the 90th percentile of skepticism, which if you doubt this, you're automatically in that 90th percentile. So as we think about how we act on a day-to-day basis, when we think about attorneys are trained to look for gaps, for fault, for incorrectness, because they want to make sure it's not because they're being overly negative on purpose. It's that they're trained to look for what ifs, or what's going to go wrong if this is not done correctly. They're trained to look for errors and omissions. So you become naturally skeptical. If you put a contract in front of an attorney, they're not going to look at it for the amazing pros and the amazing feel of it. They're not going to look for the emotion that comes out in that M&A contract. They're going to look for the potential problems. They're naturally skeptical, but that is okay when it comes to that. What it's not okay for is relationship building. Because if you think about anybody that you work with, think about, again, the first 2 or 3 people that come to mind. If you go into every conversation with them immediately skeptical, then how is that going to help your relationship management? It's not, because you're already doubting them and you're making them work harder for your approval from the get-go. So emotional intelligence will help balance some of that skepticism by understanding that we have to shift gears more so than most industries on a day-to-day basis, minute-to-minute basis, than any other industry, because we are trained to be skeptical 1 minute, but then have to manage relationships and communication the other. The gear shift is very, very rapid. So understanding that you can control that skepticism and become more trustful and more empathetic in those communications is really, really powerful. 71st percentile for urgency. Again, we're an industry built on response. We want to be responsive to clients. We want to be responsive to colleagues, to each other within our firm, across networks, across colleagues. I mean, we are trained that we are on all the time. And if you're not going to respond in 5 seconds, somebody else will. Or if you're not going to get that done in an hour, somebody else will. We have that mentality that we have to be overly urgent. Again, that is really good to make sure that you're taking care of your clients and taking care of responses and getting back to people as quickly as you can. But what it does cause a problem with is understanding that you're maybe going to rush through a communication, that you're maybe not going to listen as much as you should or pay attention to all the aspects of communication. You may just be listening and hearing the things that are going on, but you're not paying attention to body language. You're not paying attention to facial reaction, especially in Zoom meetings. It's become even trickier. But watch for those details. Take the time to invest, because if you put the shoe on the other foot, imagine if you're talking with somebody and they're looking at their phone and they're yeah, and they're kind of rushing through, or just, can you get to the point? You don't feel listened to. That damages a relationship quicker than anything, because then that individual will feel devalued, will be less likely to come to you for something in the future. So understand that it's worthwhile to slow down a little bit, invest even just a few seconds more time, or a minute more time, or 5 minutes more time into a communication, because it builds relationships. So again, important to get back to our clients, important to be responsive, but take the time when it comes to communication. Now, you may be thinking the 30th, okay, that's a good sign, right? Unfortunately not. 30th percentile for resilience. So the average person is in the 50th percentile for resilience, 30th percentile for resilience. So again, when it comes to how we are wired and how we are trained in this industry, we are taught, or attorneys are working to be perfect the first time. You can't afford to make a mistake. You can't afford to omit something. You can't afford those things, because that's what this industry is built on. It's built on perfection, getting things right the first time. So when we think about resilience, yes, we want to be perfect and we want to have things done the right way the first time. And so that is the same personality component that makes us fearful of feedback, that makes us fearful of asking questions, that makes us fearful of going out and seeking out another resource, because we don't want to be viewed as wrong or incorrect or not knowing something. So understanding that your emotional intelligence will allow you to have more resilience becomes more impactful on your day. So if any of these, if you have felt overly skeptical, if you have felt overly urgent or rushed, or you have felt scared of feedback or scared of what could possibly go wrong, again, drop a yes in the chat. I want everybody to feel that we're all on the same page, that there's work to be done. But again, I reassure you, the work can be done. And that's the benefit of emotional intelligence. Now, when we think about triggers is one of the biggest components of emotional intelligence, because again, we have our emotions can be in check. We can have really good self-management, but then something could trigger us in a certain way. Now, these are both positive and negative triggers. So be mindful that this isn't always just a negative. It could be something that sends you in an overly positive mindset as well, that could jade your judgment a little bit. But triggers are things that happen throughout the day. It could be an email. It could be a phone call. It could be a sound that you hear. It could be like, I love my son, and sometimes his room is right above my office, and he is very athletic, and he will jump off of his bed, and it will sound like he's coming through the ceiling, which I'm sure at some point he will. But that sound is really hard. It jars me, but it triggers me into a different mentality. It disrupts my train of thought. These things happen all the time. It could be anything from hearing a song that you like. It sends you in a good mood. It shifts your mentality at some level. And why that's important is that we need to start understanding what triggers us and what changes our mood and who changes our mood and how that interaction happens that sends us in a different trajectory, either positively or negatively. And we can all think of that individual, and we can, please don't name names. I don't want names. I don't want to know who they are. But each of us has an individual that we have worked with or we have come in contact with in our career or in our life that they immediately stress us out. I promise you, if you're thinking of their name or picturing their face right now, there is a certain charge of stress that comes with that. That individual triggers you in a certain way. There is a way to manage that. And I'm going to tell you how to in just a couple of seconds. But there are ways that you can change that feeling, because those people are now taking control over your mentality. They're taking control over your energy, and they're taking control over your day. Because if you think about that individual that you come in contact with, if you can't understand your emotions and manage your emotions correctly, that person can ruin the rest of your day, the rest of your week at times. So I'm going to give you some insights on how you can take that power back in those situations that triggers may affect you negatively, but also help keep your emotions in check when it happens in a positive sense as well. So let's talk through some of these different aspects of emotional intelligence and how you see them play out. So I'm going to tackle these one by one. And again, if you have any questions on these, or if you want me to dive into more of the example, I'm happy to do so. But these are going to be real life examples or real life scenarios where self-awareness can be identified and improved. And what I'm going to do in each of these sections, I'm going to give you an issue. I'm going to give you an exercise on what you can do differently. And I'm going to give you an outcome for each of the 4 buckets that I mentioned earlier: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. So let's talk about self-awareness first. And what this is intended to do is to prevent you from being this rocket that shoots out into the sky and leaves a trail of burning fire behind you. We want to keep our emotions in check. So if you think about our daily emotions, and especially in the virtual environment, we are on a roller coaster at all times. There are going to be highs and lows. There are going to be situations or communications that come through, or, maybe it's, I've learned to embrace the fact that my sons love to come visit me during Zoom meetings. It's a fun thing now, because otherwise you get stressed out. And so it's really understanding that throughout the course of a day, things are going to be coming at you from all angles. You've got your email up, you've got your text messages, you've got social media, you've got interactions with your family, you've got interactions with your colleagues. You have so many things that are impacting you on a day-to-day basis that you need to really understand what they are and who they are. And so one of my favorite things that I have personally started doing and that I've encouraged others to do, that I talk through some of their personal goals with emotional intelligence, is keep a journal. And this could be a hardbound journal. It could be a digital journal. If it's a digital journal that you want to just put some thoughts into and then erase it, that's fine too. But capturing these thoughts and capturing these emotions and using these check-ins to understand what is triggering you and what is changing your day are game-changing. This will really help you understand, because how many of you, and answer yes in the chat if you feel this way, how many of you have started the day in one mood, that you've gotten to the end of your day, whether it's at 5, 6, 7, 10 o'clock at night, and you sit there and you're like, what happened? What happened to my day? What I don't understand. It was almost like you got blindsided or sucker punched by the day. And all of a sudden you're sitting at the end of the day going, I'm wiped out and I don't know what happened. If you felt that way, because I know that I have, drop a yes in the chat, because we all, I believe, have felt that way. And if you're too shy to admit it, we'll just pat you on the back and say, we know you feel that way too. But by journaling throughout the day, and do this mid-morning, do it mid-afternoon, do it at evening. Because if you stop in the middle of the day, if you think about taking 10 minutes over lunch, sit down and think about, okay, what has happened to the day and the day to this point? Who have I interacted with? How has it changed my mood? Maybe they didn't have any impact. That's fine. But maybe there was a meeting that you had at 10 o'clock, that somebody said something in that meeting that you didn't acknowledge or that you didn't address at the time. Jot that down, because if you didn't address it and all of a sudden you're sitting there thinking, God, I wish Rich wouldn't have said that in the meeting. That really upset me. Jot that down. You now understand and recognize that Rich is a trigger and that what he said was a trigger. And then you can identify why. Because the biggest point of this is understanding where your emotional vulnerabilities are. And you can control that emotion in that relationship by retraining your response. So again, I go back to the fact of, you have that person in your mind that immediately stresses you out when you think about them, when you think about their name or their face, they immediately stress you out. Why? Because there was some point of some interaction or some communication, whether it was one way or two way, that you immediately established them as a stressor. But if you now think about them, I had a colleague that I worked with years and years ago, that this guy was the worst. He was just the worst. And instead of being stressed out, because I was stressed out about this person for a long, long time, and I let him own a lot of mental and emotional real estate in my world. And when I stopped and thought, okay, why am I doing that? And what can I do different? I then, and this was even before I learned emotional intelligence, I understood that I could say, you know what, I'm going to do something different. So the next time that guy called, or the next time that guy swung by my office, I looked at him and I said, you know what, how are you? How's your day going? How can I help you? What can I do for you? Yeah, sure. It sounds sarcastic, but at the same time, it allowed me to take control of my emotions. And I started it off rather than saying, yeah, sure. What can how can I help? Different mentality. I'm all of a sudden on the defensive. I'm all of a sudden stressed out. He's now got control over that conversation. So if you go into it, you don't have to be overly joyful, but go into it with a very positive, like, I'm going to take care of this. I'm going to handle this. I'm going to make this situation. I'm going to take control back of this interaction. What can I do for you? How can I help? Smile. It changes the game immediately, because then you're not sitting back and being defensive. That little smile, that little change in tone, and that retrain of a response will change your relationship with that individual that stresses you out. And if it is somebody that is maybe not in your immediate circle, maybe it's somebody that you follow on social media or that you see in the news, turn it off, unfollow them, do something different, retrain the response, or disengage, because then you're taking control back of your emotions, you're taking control back of your day, and you're removing a negative trigger from your life. That is the power that you take back in those situations. So you can control your emotions a lot more strongly. So when we think about self-management, so it's our emotions and how we feel, and now what are we doing with them? So our self-management, and again, if everybody doesn't answer yes to this, then I may have to start calling out some liars. If you have felt stress or burnout or fatigue, specifically in the last 10, 11 months, or even before that, drop a yes in the chat, because I promise you, everybody has felt that at some level. We all have varying levels of it, but I promise you that we've all felt that way. Chances are you wouldn't be here if you didn't feel that way, because it's an important thing to acknowledge. And this past year, we have understood the humanization of mental health and self-care, because we have to take care of ourselves, because we are our most important resource. And that's, again, why I'm thrilled you're here, because this will help you do that. So if we think about those times that we're burnt out and that we're stressed and that we feel like one meeting is rolling into the next and we have no control over our emotions and no control over our day, this is something that it will be one of those that some will read this and go, well, that's not happening, because the idea of setting boundaries, specifically in our industry, is a shocking concept, because we feel like we always have to be available. We always have to be on. And now more than ever, you now have the open door to start setting boundaries and start controlling the narrative and controlling your day more, because people are becoming more aware of the need for mental health and self-care. And so this is your opportunity to do things for you. Again, this is not completely going off the radar and not completely blowing things off and not completely being negligent. What this is taking back some control in your day. So if it's something that you need to get up and take a mental walk, you need to, even if it's just walking up and down your stairs in your house, but you need, say, 10 minutes. Maybe you're going for a midday meditation. Maybe you just want to go sit and have lunch with your family uninterrupted. Set your out of office and say, hey, for the next 30 minutes, I'm going to be completely unavailable. Even tell them why. I'm having lunch with my family. I want to hear about my son's day in virtual school. I want to hear how he's doing. If you need something and it is completely urgent, here is my cell phone number. Number one, what that does is that it distances you from the need to check your phone and the need to be completely engaged. You can stop and pause and pay attention to your family. You can engage with your spouse. You can engage with your kids. You can engage with friends. Do something for you. You can take a Peloton. I'm a Peloton freak. And I love midday rides now, because it's 20 minutes, 30 minutes that I can actually just get some energy out and get the blood flowing again, as opposed to sitting in my chair all day long. So take that time and understand that it is your time to take care of yourself. And so in that out of office, say why. I've got 30 minutes. I'm exploring my new favorite hobby, yoga. Great. What that does, because chances are that person, unless they just completely want to, need something and is life or death urgent, they're not going to call. What they probably will do, and I've heard this from a couple of people that I've encouraged to do this, not only do they not bother the person via cell phone, they actually, the next time they connect with them, because you can say, hey, I'm going to be available in 30 minutes at this time. I'm happy to return your email or your phone call at this time. When those times have come, the feedback that I've gotten is that not only did their phone not ring, so somebody didn't actually call them out of office, when they reconnected with that individual that had sent them the email or shot them a message, they actually had that person say, you know what, that's a great idea. Not only maybe the activity itself, but the idea of setting up that just 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, maybe it's even 5 minutes, that you just need to go up and go stretch your legs. Not going to be available for the next 5 minutes. It sounds ridiculous, but the mental disconnect that you have from having to feel like you're on all the time is so valuable. It is so valuable to your replenishment of you as an individual, and it is really critical to your self-management. Again, it will reduce your stress and it will give you control back on your day. Try it out, see how it works, and let me know. I'll have my contact information at the end. I would love to hear how that impacts your day and how that works out. Now, we've moved on from the personal buckets of examples to now the more social relationship side of emotional intelligence. So when we think about social awareness, maybe you're somebody who leads a team, and maybe you're somebody who is driving initiatives or driving projects, and you're performing as a tactical manager and not necessarily what we would consider a leader. So you're maybe micromanaging some things, and maybe you're getting down in the details of things. This could be detrimental to how you interact with your teams and how you manage the project and how the reaction comes and what the energy and the involvement is from your team as well. So this is really critical, and this may be a client to firm or client to attorney relationship as well. It's really critical that you ask for feedback and that you actively listen, because that is where you open up that communication. That's where you invite the communication to you, as opposed to just consistently sending it out and it's a one-way street of communication. You're now allowing things to improve your relationship with the individual, your personal, professional relationships, your communication ability, your ability to lead, and the impactfulness that you're going to have in that communication will dramatically increase because you're taking the time to say, how am I doing? What do you need from me? How can I help you? How can I support you? Open up those communication lines and then listen, because it is really critical. We all want to feel engaged. We all want to feel heard. And so if we're asking for that, we're opening up that line of communication. It will lead to higher engagement because people will always work harder for those that they feel care about them and care about their opinions. And it will also lead to greater satisfaction as an individual. Because if we're just consistently in our one-way street and we're going in one direction and we feel like we've got blinders on and we're doing our thing for ourselves, we're missing the opportunities for connection. We're missing the opportunities for support, and we're missing the opportunities for engagement. The more engagement and the more your landscape gets horizontal as well as vertical, the more rounded as an individual, the more rounded as and impactful of a leader you become. It is really important to start doing that. Again, feedback is a good thing. Feedback is always a good thing. Whether it's positive or negative feedback, it's always a good thing. Even negative, I know it sounds like negative feedback is a good thing. That sounds like the most oxymoronish statement that anybody can make. But I promise you, and I think about this when I think about clients. When was the last time a client sent your law firm a breakup letter and CD, like a mixtape, right? They don't. They realize that you're not opening up the lines of communication. You're not soliciting feedback, and maybe another firm is. So this is a really good opportunity to enhance your performance as a leader, as an individual. Same thing with your personal relationships. This is really important that you say, hey, how am I doing? How are things going? Because we're so busy and we're so focused on what's in front of us that maybe we forget to ask. I ask my sons and my wife, how am I doing? What can I do better? And that just does more for our relationship as a family, because we always need to improve consistently. And finally, relationship management. This is really everything wrapped into one. Again, maybe you don't feel as impactful as you want to. Maybe you feel like you're talking and you're trying to lead, but things aren't happening the way that they need to, and they're not progressing the way that they need to. Why is that? Why is it not working? Again, it's that two-way street mentality. Again, instead of consistently demanding things of people and telling people to do things and directing people to do things, give them opportunities. Give them the option of letting you support them for once. That, again, will do so much for your relationship. It will allow people, even if they have nothing that they need your support on, at least that offer does something for that relationship that you're trying to solidify. It does something for that cohesion within a team. It does something for the culture of an organization. It does so much to understand, the most impactful question I've ever asked anybody, and I ask it over and over again, especially when I first meet somebody, what can I do to support you? Because I want to let them know that I'm invested in the relationship, that I want to do everything I can to make it a two-way street. That does wonders for your relationships. That does wonders for your communication. Again, that trust build is so important too, because that individual understands that you're there for them just as much as they would want to be there for you. And chances are, when you do that, you find that people will be more supportive of you in return. Again, it's not always going to happen. They're not always going to have something front of mind that they need you to do for them. But just the knowledge that you're there to do that and that you're genuine about it will build trust. It will build communication. You will be the first thought on their mind when it comes to something that they need, because you've offered that resource. And I would much rather be the first person that somebody thinks of when they need a solution to a problem or they need help than be that person like, well, we're just kind of a selfish one-way person. I'm not going to ask him for any help on this because I know I won't get it, or I'll feel obligated if I do. So again, take the time to give, to do things for somebody else. Do something that is unexpected and thoughtful. Those impactful decisions will do so much for your relationship. Now, I want to touch on some things here, and these are the really fun things to think about. Again, these are going to be activities, as I mentioned earlier, to enhance your emotional intelligence, because no matter where you sit on the spectrum, whether you've got the worst emotional intelligence of this entire webinar audience, or you've got the best emotional intelligence of this webinar audience, you can always improve. You can always get better. In situations, it's always going to be a constant up and down. There's always going to be ebbs and flows, because again, we are impacted by so many different levels of communication and so many different avenues of communication that we need to manage those emotions at all times. So it's really important that you understand how to manage your emotions. Now, these are the ones that I focus on for people in professional situations and things that you can do in your work environment to enhance your emotional intelligence. Again, I'm not going to read all of these to you. A lot of them are pretty self-explanatory, but I go back to the blocking time on your calendar, the blocking and protecting of time, setting up boundaries, those types of things. And what I will marry up is the blocking time on your calendar and setting time for problem solving. This has become a game changer for me and for a lot of people that I've shared this with, because again, how many of you, and drop another yes in the chat if you felt this, how many of you looked at your Outlook calendar or whatever calendar service you use, and your calendar looks like one into the next, 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 and you're constantly, maybe there's that snowball effect that you're a minute late from one meeting and it just cascades your entire day, that the entire day is not shot, but you're constantly feeling like you're rushing into the next meeting and you've got some notes from this meeting, but you haven't had a chance to do anything with them. And again, you get to the end of the day and you look at that list and you're like, wait, what was that? I remember jotting that down, but I can't remember because I haven't had time. I know, by the way, I didn't eat lunch until 3. Finding that time to block time on your calendar to not only take care of yourself, big game changer of changing hour-long meetings to 45-minute meetings. Give yourself that 15 minutes. Back in high school and middle school, we had passing periods to get from one class to the next. Give yourself a passing period between meetings. Don't take a back-to-back meeting. Block that time that you can, look at your notes, figure out what your next steps are, figure out if you can delegate something, figure out what the next communication is. Understand and absorb and make some decisions on what you just did before you go into the next thing you're going to do, because most of your meetings aren't going to be completely the same. There's going to be aspects based on your job description or your job role that are going to have similar elements, but none of them are going to be identical. Every single meeting is going to have a different ask. So give yourself that in between, that passing period time, or if you're setting the meeting, set it for 45 minutes. You'd be amazed at what can get done in 45 minutes, where 60 minutes just lends itself to additional time where things don't get done. Set those times. But also with projects, or maybe you're trying to work on something or get caught up on a project or push a new idea forward. Block that time on your calendar. Find an hour. Like if you've got an hour on your calendar, block it today. Look at your calendar for the next 3 weeks. You've got an hour, block it and say, you know what, this dedicated time is for me to work on fill in the blank project or fill in the blank initiative, or this is something that I have been putting off for 5-6 months. I got to get it done and I need to block the time. Do that. Block that time for yourself to do those things, to solve the problems, to ask the questions, to push the projects forward. Because again, if we are just, giving ourselves to our calendar and whoever wants the time, we don't make the time to take care of what we need to take care of. So that may sound refreshing to you. I promise you it is the most energetic thing that you can do with your calendar. You block that time, you either give yourself the time in between meetings or block the time for problem solving and project management. It will do wonders for you. It will do wonders for your focus and your energy around everything that you're focused on, and it will give you that time back to focus your energy on those projects. Now, these are the fun things. These are the things that you can do at any given time. And I promise you, and I would love to, if you see something on this list that you want to do more of, put it in the chat. I would love to see the different responses pop up here, because any of these things will allow you to enhance your emotional intelligence. I'll go directly to music. Music has always been my saving grace, has always been a passion of mine, but especially during the pandemic, music has been a driving force of my self-care, of my mental health, of my emotional intelligence. Because as a former DJ in a previous life, I have an insane amount of music in my iTunes. I have become a big Spotify fan as well. My favorite thing in the entire world is to make playlists. So I have playlist upon playlist. I have playlists for playlists. I have that many that I set up for different moods. So if I need to focus on a project, I've got a playlist for that. If I need to think about something creatively, I've got a playlist for that. If I'm frustrated and I need to get out some energy, I've got a playlist for that. If I need to really just decompress from the day, I've got a list for that. It's got a lot of Sade in it because Sade is amazing. But it really is important that I have those because it helps me balance my mood. It helps me focus the energy where I need to focus it at. And truly, it's fun. It's fun to take time to build the playlist and edit the playlist and add the things because it invokes those emotions of positivity or of focus or of stress relief. Those are really beneficial for me. If you're not a music fan, I hope you're a fan of sleep. I mean, if you're not, we have to have a whole separate conversation on what we can do different in your life. But take the time, block the time, cut off your day at a certain time and get more sleep. The studies are showing that we're sleeping less and working more now since the pandemic than we ever have before. So dedicate the time to focus on some sleep for yourself. Replenish, because you cannot pour from an empty cup. Take care of yourself, take care of your body, take care of your mind. But any of these things can enhance your emotional intelligence. Why? Because it allows you to pause. It allows you to focus on positivity. It allows you to focus on energy and emotion management. And those are the things that when you train yourself to do that, increases your emotional intelligence. It allows you, because if you think, like if I go listen to Sade and then I go into a stressful meeting, I have a whole different aspect. I mean, it's very smooth jazz, but I'm able to take on those questions and those stressful conversations a lot better if I'm more relaxed going into it, as opposed to going in just stressed and clenching my fist and trying to worry about what's going to come next. That in of itself is a retrain of my emotion and is in allowing me to flex my emotional intelligence muscles to do better for myself and to be better for other people as well. So any of these things, and I'm happy to share the slides after the fact. So maybe you're taking pictures, and if you want a picture, tweet them out or whatever, please do so. I want everybody to feel like they are empowered to manage their emotions. And as mentioned at the very beginning of the presentation, I am a quote person, so I book in my presentations with quotes. And again, this is really important that we own who we are, that we understand that you don't have to be perfect. I promise you, something in this presentation has probably sparked the idea that, wow, my emotional intelligence could be a lot better in this area or this section. I want you to acknowledge that. It's okay. None of us are perfect. I know that is probably a shocking, based on the whole resilience factor that I shared earlier. The fact that you're not perfect is the most powerful thing that you can admit to yourself. But you can always work harder. You can work better. You can work smarter at being a more impactful individual and a more emotionally intelligent individual and a more balanced individual. So this to me is so powerful to understand these things, to be true to who you are, and do what you need to do to take care of yourself. Do what you need to do to replenish your own emotional bucket so that you can be more impactful for yourself first, but then for others, because that is where, and you are in control of that, you and you alone. Because if you let everybody else determine what your emotions should be, you're just going to throw yourself to the wind as far as how you're going to feel on a day-to-day basis. So take control back. Take that power back on your emotions. And I promise you, your happiness will go through the roof. Your engagement will go through the roof. Your stress will go through the floor. Your anxiety will go through the floor compared to what it is right now. So I implore you and I beg of you to exercise some of these activities and think about these different situations, these different triggers, these different activities that you can engage in to be more emotionally intelligent. So I would love to chat with y'all. And then the last thing that I'll show you here, if you have any questions, I'm going to get to the Q&A chat functionality and answer any questions that we have. If I don't get to your question, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to be a resource to help you out. And then if you don't recognize the QR code, if you have your cell phone, this is the time you can get your cell phone out. So if you go to the LinkedIn app, in the search bar, there is a little icon on the far right of the search bar with 3 boxes and an X. If you click that, you may have to give permission to your camera, which I promise is not a big data thing for me. But if you open that camera up and you hold it over the QR code, you'll go directly to my LinkedIn profile. I would love to hear what your aha moment was, what you're going to start practicing moving forward, what goals you have, how much more sleep you're going to get. Like anything that I can hear back from you that I can assist you further, or that I can be just a resource to applaud you and hold you accountable. Like, please let me know how I can help you, because that's what was put on this earth to do. And that's why I'm here today, is to serve you all and to help you be better as people and as professionals. So at this point, we'll turn to the Q&A. But again, my gratitude to all of you for taking time to join this presentation and learn more about emotional intelligence.
Rich, thank you very much. This is Tom. And first of all, I have to say, boy, you're just a compelling speaker and the content was great. I really enjoyed it. I will say I would present myself as a case study to the group of, if you do what Rich says, you will get great results in your life. And examples are, I do gratitude practice every day. I meditate. I have a journal, and I have actually been able to reprogram some of my triggers out of my brain and some of my limiting beliefs. So, what he's saying, it's the real thing. Rich, my question would be, I'm a big reader. What book would you recommend for me? First
I would recommend Dr. Travis Bradberry's that I mentioned earlier, the Emotional Intelligence 2.0. It's a fantastic book. Yeah. My other favorite book that I recommend all the time is The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz.
I've read it.
It is more of a philosophical book, but really what it breaks down are the 4 agreements of how you can manage your emotions and how you can manage your life and how you can react to other people and how you determine the path of your day on any given day. So Emotional Intelligence 2.0 and the 4 Agreements are my 2 favorite books.
Rich, if you go to the Q&A, we've got a question from Tyler Vanden Avond.
Mm-hmm.
Do you recommend having weekly informal meetings with the team members for the purpose of unwinding? And do you believe in including a superiors appropriate for these meetings?
So 2 parts to this question, and I appreciate you asking the question, Tyler. It's a great one. Number one, I think weekly informal meetings, I think kicking off the concept of having an informal meeting is good because it allows you to connect with an individual and answer any questions that it doesn't feel so formal and project-based. So really having those touch bases, because I think that's important that we connect as people, especially in the virtual environments. Don't assume that everybody's got it together and don't assume that everybody's doing well. Those outreaches, even if informal, are fun. It can be 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever you need. It is really important to do that. Now, moving forward, I would ask the individual, like, hey, is it worth it to you to check in? I would love to hear more about what's going on with you and how I can be of support to you. Absolutely. Just ask them what they would like, because there will be some people that will say, God, I don't want to talk about it every week, but maybe it's once a month. Maybe it's every other week. So ask them. And that's a good exercise for you in active listening. What can you do to support them? And how often do you want to be informal? Maybe it's a small group setting. Whatever you can do to meet them where they need to be is really important. Superior, I leave that to your discretion. I think having group meetings that are informal, that include the entire team, where it's just you're talking about your day and talking about things that are going on in your life, is fun to do. And it gives you everybody a chance to kind of disconnect from the hecticness of the inbox and the hecticness of the work projects. So I highly encourage doing that from a team perspective. So superiors would obviously be included in that.
Super. We got a couple more coming in. James Michaelowicz asks, journal only negative triggers or positive ones as well?
Oh, great question, James. Both, because the other part of that, so understanding what your negative triggers are and avoiding those or managing the different reaction to those is really important. But positive triggers, I will flat out admit my favorite song in the entire world right now is Baby I'm a Star by Prince. I play it every single day. Why? Because I know that it puts me in a good mood. I journaled one day that it came on my Spotify playlist on random, and it changed my dynamic immediately in a positive frame of mind. And I'm not originally from Minneapolis, so it's not a cliche thing that I listen to Prince. But that song became an immediate positive impact for me. So that trigger, when I journaled it, I was like, oh, my day was totally different because I started it by hearing this song and I was singing and carrying on. Probably too much information, but I'm not too proud. So that positive trigger became something that became a mainstay in my day. So I highly recommend negative and positive triggers for that reason.
Rich, I'll say that my journal is only on positive triggers. And what's nice about it is, well, first of all, I programmed out most of my negative ones. But what's nice about it is if you get in the habit of finishing each day by just listing 10 amazing things,
yep,
you change your brain that you're going through your day looking for things to put on that list. So, 9:30 in the morning. Wow, what a great cup of coffee. I'll put this on my list tonight.
Right. Once blended, not two from now on. It's a really good way of doing that.
We've got a question from Hushkat, and he said a recent slide stated to respect your emotions. What do you mean by that?
So I think this in of itself is one of the most powerful things that you can do, and respecting your emotions. And what I mean by that is understanding that it's okay to be sad. It's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to be agitated. It's okay to be angry, because I think so many times in our society, we feel like, I can't address that emotion, especially, in situations of tension or frustration or sadness. Like, people can't admit that they're sad without feeling some sort of stigma, or, maybe I'm depressed. That was one of the first things I admitted to a colleague of mine, I think it was back early summer, was that I didn't realize that depression was creeping up on me. And then all of a sudden I was like, why is this so hard every single day? And I respected the emotion of saying, oh, this is why. And this is how I can respect that emotion. I respected the fact that it was that. And when you respect the emotion, you take control, because if you're not respecting it and you're pushing it down, you're either letting it fester and bubble up, which could be problematic, or you're not addressing something that could actually benefit you moving forward. So by respecting it, it's acknowledging what it is. So it's that self-awareness piece. And then it's the self-management part of it as well. So acknowledging that you're depressed, or acknowledging that you're sad, or acknowledging that you're mad. And then what you do with it moving forward is all about respecting your emotions.
Very good. One more question from David Burkhart. Thanks, Rich. Can you put up the QR code for the website where we can buy a snazzy jacket like yours? Let me say, I also like Rich's jacket. So
thank you very much. And from my good friend David, I should expect nothing less than a cheeky question like that. So I will say that it is a custom. We were actually talking about this before the webinar started. The King brothers here in Minneapolis are the best suit designers you will find. And it's funny because they outfitted, and I'm not a Game of Thrones fan, but they outfitted some guy that they call the Mountain. So this is gigantic guy, and they work with a lot of the people here in Minneapolis, and it was a gift from a friend of mine to go visit them. The King brothers are absolutely outstanding. Like this is, and it's like kind of like, it's the old movie Boomerang, like you got to coordinate. So King brothers, check them out.
Rich, thank you very much again. It was a fun presentation, engaging, and just you hit it out of the park. I appreciate you. And also thanks for LBN for hosting this and getting the people out. So everybody have a great day. Remember to do your journaling tonight and get that book, which we will distribute to you in follow-up email with a link to the recording. Oh, there was one other question. Rich, are you going to be sharing the slide deck?
Yes, I'm happy to share the slides. And like I said, if there are anything that pops up in here or anything that you would like further explanation on, obviously my contact information is in the back. Don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm happy to engage and answer any questions that you have.
Super. Thanks again for joining us today.
Thanks, everybody.